get started. So I got Amit Bendov, founder and CEO of Gong.io. We're going to be talking about the anatomy of the perfect pitch. And, it's pretty interesting because technology has made it easier than ever to really finally start testing some of the stuff that works inside of these calls. So, instead of, maybe in the past relying on intuition or gut or, your script or, any of that, you can actually start building a playbook around what you're supposed to say, when people bring up certain things, what to do. And so Amit's going to tell us a lot about kind of the anatomy of that perfect pitch. And hopefully it's going to be extremely actionable and educational for everyone involved. So before I introduce Amit and let him run with it, just a couple quick things. Ask us questions, please. We're going to get to them at the end. In the GoToWebinar or on Twitter using hashtag #SHWebinar. And then the recording of this will be available probably in the next 48 hours on saleshacker.com. So stay tuned for that. But we're getting a little bit of echo on your end, Amit. You got or someone on our end, just mute. But Amit, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks, Max. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to have such a great audience. So let me tell you first a little bit myself, and I think this is relevant. So I've built sales organization for 3 companies before that achieved over $1 billion in value, and we basically founded Gong based on learning from the growth that we've experienced on the challenges. So let me start by giving you an example that will illustrate some of the things that we're going to do. So this is a tale of a $6 million word. And so at one of my previous company, we had one of the SDRs were doing 3x the average, 3x qualified opportunities per quarter, consistently quarter over quarter, and we're always trying to figure out what on earth is this guy doing? Like, what is he doing that other people don't? So you'd think, okay, he's putting in more calls, more dials, more leads, but he was doing more calls, but not 3x. And at the same time, you saw that some people were doing fewer calls and still doing more calls than others. So that was not about the numbers. And we started listening to calls, really placed close attention to what was said, what was the customer saying. There are quite a few things, but one of them was one word that we have been able to change everybody else, and that really increased productivity. So the company did cloud-based ERP to Fortune 1000 companies, and every time the SDR would call, they would ask, do you have a project for the next 6 to 12 months? And what this super performer was doing, he didn't ask, he was just saying, I understand that you have a project. And that was one of the things that really helped. So the reason is that a lot of times when trying to understand, people just don't want to tell you. They have a project, they just don't want to tell you. If you tell I understand that, they're more likely to push the discussion forward. So we've changed that, and that created almost immediately just one word with all the BDRs, $6 million of additional pipeline right there. So that's just one small example, and that was a very tedious process that we really had to listen to a few calls and a lot of guesswork. So that's just one example. Let me just share with you some of the conventional wisdom that you probably are hearing all the time, and probably ring a bell. So first one, it's a numbers game. All right, that's what sales is, a numbers game. That's what everybody says. But like conventional wisdom, this thing just creates conventional results. If you're looking at extraordinary results, then I rarely trust conventional wisdom. So it's really, there are 2 things wrong with that. First, it's not just a numbers game. Just not throw more leads, more calls, more SDR, double down on everything. It's true that if you don't put in a call, you're not going to sell, but above a certain threshold, actually, it's not true. You can make more calls and still sell less. So some of the better people that I've seen have actually done fewer calls, just had better call. The other thing, and that's a more on a personal comment, it's really not a game. It's like people pay with their careers if you're not successful, so you got to be careful. It's not having more calls, but better calls. And the other things that I'm sure you've heard 1,000 times about sales, it's both art and science. And I don't know if it's science, but it's definitely not art. By art, I guess that people mean stuff that they don't understand or can't explain or both. But art is in a museum. This is stuff that we still don't understand. That's why we call it art. I don't know how to teach you. It's just art. And you can see a lot of things, but art is in museum, not in sales. What do you think, Max? I mean, do you see that quite often?
Yeah, sorry, unmuting for you. Oh. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely the art side is something that is so important, but we're definitely starting to see with the technology more that science side come into play. And if you can leverage both, you're probably going to, it's basically like having like the full pie at 100%. So, there's a lot of technology coming out now that's helping people. And, I'll let you keep going, but it's definitely much more of an art and a science than ever before.
So this is our quest to try to decipher all those things that people think as magic or art and move more towards knowing and not just believing. And I'll share with you just a few tips. I mean, as I said, just to be real, it's not 5 things that will going to change, rock your world, or make you there. There are a lot of things, but here are some 5 of things that we found. Some of them are quite surprising and a byproduct of the research. So the quest here is really to understand. You see that the top line is the reps that blow their quotas or overachieve their quotas consistently quarter over quarter. And they're only, if everybody's in a company is like that, you probably have to say your quotas are too low. But most companies, it's about 20% of the people that consistently overachieve quarter over quarter. Everybody else is kind of okay. I mean, they're pretty good. Sometimes you could have a good quarter, bad quarter, never great, and never bad enough that you want to let them go. So the question is, how do we increase and improve their game so they can get maybe not as good as the top guys, but get closer. Even 5, 10%, would really make a big difference. That's the $1 billion question. So what we've done, what I'm going to share with you, some results of an ongoing research that we're doing by analyzing what's actually happening inside those calls. Not how many calls, not on what time you call, not on who you call, but once you get a person on the phone, what's being discussed between the salesperson and the prospect. And then we look at all these calls and we look at what happened after the call with the outcome. Did the deal move forwards or backwards, or is it stuck? Basically, you had the call, the probability of the opportunity should go up. It was 60%, now it's 70%. If 30 days have gone by, still 60%, I mean it wasn't a very successful call. Definitely if it's closed lost, it was not a good call. And that's how once you get a certain volume, you can understand what are the patterns that are more successful than others. So to be a little more specific, we've analyzed over 25,000 recordings of sales calls. They're all B2B companies, mostly in technology, inside sales companies. The type of calls are what I call demo to deal. So first demo, discoveries, commercial, trials, closing, and a little bit of onboarding. Not including outbound calls for SDRs or BDRs, not the inbound. So these are the longer type calls with more substance. The average duration is 43 minutes. So these tend to be longer calls, not following a particular script. And the mix, I don't have the exact numbers here, but if you can envision the funnel, obviously they're more early stage call than late stage. There are much fewer negotiation and legal calls than demo or discovery calls. So here's the first surprising fact that we have discovered. Okay, and there are a few tips like this that we're going to share. So a key question, obviously, when you get the customer for a first call, substantial call, be it discovery or demo, is trying to qualify a deal from a timing perspective. So the questions are, when do you envision this project going live, or where do you miss this bar, or do you guys establish a timeline, or whatever, however you want to ask it. Every company is different. They're different between reps. It doesn't really matter. And then there's an even wider range of answers that prospects can provide, and they can range from, we need this yesterday, to sometime next year, or think like first thing after the holidays, different types of questions. And one word, we looked at the correlation between what people said, what the prospect said about their timing, and then at the deals that actually closed, and the deals that actually closed at the time that they actually said that they're going to make this happen. All right? And that word, I mean, there are a lot of words that I could think about, and I'm sure you can too, but one of them was actually surprising, and that was the word probably, which almost seems like a negative. So if the customer says probably February or March, then if the deal does happen, then very high probability, over 70%, that it will happen in March. Okay? So that was one of the most, I mean, there are some words that had high correlation, but this one the most surprising and one of the highest in terms of probability. So there are words like first, start, February, March, but this was one of the best indicators. Let me just caution you here and then give you another bonus word. This is correlation. It doesn't mean causality. So it doesn't mean that because they say probably, or if they say probably, then the deal will actually happen. It doesn't mean that the deal will happen, but just that if it does happen and they have said probably in January, then it's likely that this is a real date. Of course, nothing is 100%. And we don't know why. I mean, just correlation, just the way that's what the data suggests. It doesn't say why. I can only speculate why. So if someone says, I need this yesterday or sometime next year, they haven't really given it a lot of thought. This is, I need this yesterday, really doesn't mean anything. It means that you don't have a plan. And same thing for maybe sometime next year. But if we're in November right now, and someone says probably in March, then probably, quote unquote, it's a much more thoughtful. They're giving some thought. They're being a little cautious. They don't want to mislead you, and they're giving you a more careful estimate. But again, that's just my guess. Let me give you another one. It's actually not a good sign for your deal. That was also surprising. It's not as surprising, but not something that could come up. So here's a term that if the prospect says that, you need to be very attuned and understand that you might be seeing an obstacle for the deal. If anybody wants to guess, feel free to send a check to Max. All right, I'll give you 2 seconds more, and then we'll compare it towards the end of the webinar. But that phrase is figure out, especially when it's being said towards the later part of the call. The prospect said, like, I need to speak to the team and figure out what our strategy is for this. So I need to figure out how to communicate this to my boss. Anything that says figure out doesn't mean the deal is lost, but with very high probability, it'll stall unless you address that issue. So there's some kind of doubt or obstacles that they can't even articulate, but that suggests some kind of an obstacle that you'll need to address. So here's another one that, again, we didn't think, not something that we would teach the reps. They'll never figure it out, but once you look at the data, you start to see patterns that repeat themselves. Any questions so far, Max? Or
yeah, we had a couple of people chime in with some answers for you. So some people said need this ASAP, might, and figure out. So when you ask that question, there's a little bit of a lag there. If they say not what we are looking for, thanks very much, suggest an obstacle. So there's a couple comments here. And then we had a question real quick about the industries from these calls. So you said you analyzed over 25,000 calls. What were the industries of these? Do you think that matters, number one, and number two, what were they?
I think it may matter, and mostly are technology companies, so internet, software as a service, cloud services, some services companies, and mostly inside sales. So it's a fairly broad range of companies. Some are small, some are large. So I can't say whether if you're a completely different industry, maybe you'll face different things. But that's the gamut.
And is it all in North American companies?
Yes. Only U.S. and Canada. Sorry, Canada too. All right. So here's. Let me move to tip number 2, which I call when to pop the question. So another the qualification. Again, in those calls, there's always there's a lot of debate, and I've heard opinions, and then the exhibit operates when to ask the customers if this is a budgeted project or whatever you want to ask you. Can you guys afford this? I mean, if you're talking with someone, you want to make sure that it's a good use of your time, and you want to be polite without offending. But you want to understand, what's the likelihood that, are these people that can buy? Do they have money? Is it budgeted for? And whatever variation. So the question is, there are 2 schools of thought, and probably there are some ranges. You ask it at the beginning. This is very old school. You start by asking a pre-qualifying question. If, they don't have money that you can't sell, and you just walk away and keep it short, or you wait a little bit and establish more value, and then you ask about the budget down the road. I'd be curious to maybe take a poll and see what people think. But instead of thinking, I could show you what we have found. Sorry, I'll move to this question. So when you look at, this is a structure of the call. Let me show you explain what we're seeing here. So think about a 60-minute call, okay? And not all calls are 60 minutes. Some are 30, some are 70 minutes. They're normalized and scaled so that as if they're on a single timeline. Okay, so that's number 1. Okay. Number 2, there are 2 lines. Okay, and let's just look at the yellow line for now, and it counts when was the budget question discussed in the call. And for example, you see around minute 15 or 16, there is a tick. It means that here they're in a lot of calls. Okay, that's where the majority of the calls, this question was discussed. The blue line shows what the top 20% people were doing. Okay, so you can see that they're asking pretty much about the same locations, but the better salespeople ask a little bit about the budget early on, but got to it much more depth towards the end of the call. And again, this is a correlation, not causation, but probably once they've established a little more rapport and value. So this, at least for these calls, this is a more successful pattern. Now here's another related tip, and I'm going to go backward one tip. Okay, so the question is, people always want to know about pricing, and companies have different policies. Some instruct both the BDRs and sometimes the AE not to talk pricing. So BDRs, you can't talk pricing, you need to send it to an account executive. But even an account executive, how much should you be, when and how much should you be discussing pricing on a call, on an initial call? Okay, we're looking at an intro call. So here's what we have found. Okay, so first, just a clarification on what's pricing. It's not that the word pricing was mentioned, because this could mean a lot of things, but I call them chunks or segments of that are focused around pricing. So here's an example, and there's some errors here. It's just transcription errors. I'm just showing you authentic here. So we can work with you to get a little bit of flexible there, a little wiggle room. Our base spec is usually 20, so you're looking at somewhere between 20 and 25 to, get this done. Okay, that's the pricing segment. Okay, so that's just one example. And if you look at the chart, okay, the y-axis is the win rate. Okay, closed won divided by the number of opportunity. Okay, and the columns are the number of pricing segments, the average number of pricing segments on these calls. And here's an interesting pattern here. And this intuitively reminds you of stuff that I've seen before. So if pricing is not mentioned at all, actually it's not so good. Okay, and if it takes too much time, it's also not a good sign. The optimal number is around 3 or 4. Okay, so not too much, not too little. And usually in terms of times, it takes about anywhere from 0.5% to 1.5% of the call. So just maybe a few minutes, which is very interesting. It also makes sense. If someone doesn't ask about pricing, then maybe they're not serious about buying. If all they talk about pricing, probably they're just trying to get a price offer so they can negotiate with your competitors. Or they're too price sensitive or whatever, but this is just the result. Okay? Again, what it does not mean that from now on you should talk about pricing 3 times on your calls and then you're going to close more deals. Absolutely not. I hope you understand that. Okay? But it means that you should pay close attention to what degree your prospect is talking about it. Okay, it's just the right amount, not too much, not too little, which is another signal that this is a qualified opportunity worthy of your time.
Can you define price segment for us?
Sorry, can I define what?
Price segment for us?
Yeah, so this is a phrase. It's a sentence, or what's called an utterance. So just like the one example that we have here. So you can see the quoted text, so we can work with you. That's one segment. Okay, there could be another. So let me tell you about our pricing, and here's our best effective, here's our customer asks. It doesn't necessarily even have to contain the word pricing. It could say, is this something that your organization can afford? Okay, so it could be any kind
You're
of
talking
work.
about, so a price segment for you is every time somebody talks about pricing during a call. So they can bring it up 3 or 4 or 5 times during the call. And
Yes.
talk about it for 5 seconds and talk about it for 10 seconds. They can actually say the word pricing, or they can say something else that alludes to the pricing. But the segment is actually how many times they bring it up during that call.
Yes, yes. You could think of a segment as a paragraph or a sentence. It's not 100% accurate, but it's a pretty good way to think about it. It's pretty close.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we had a couple people that were interested in the definition there.
I'll explain later on if there's time. I'll explain a little bit how exactly this was measured. If it's interesting that sometimes I understand how technically it was done, but that's just the basic measure. I try to keep it simple here. Tip number 4 is about call dynamics, and there is a cliche and conventional wisdom actually turns out to be pretty true about the listen to talk ratio of reps. We all know that we tend to talk more than we should versus listen. What I was taught is 2 years and 1 month, and that should be pretty much the ratio between listening and talking. And so we've measured that. Okay, so every call gets analyzed for percentage that the rep is talking versus the lead is talking. There are some more subtleties, not just how much they're talking, but is it interactive or long and winding feature stories, and how many questions are being asked. So that's what I call dynamic. But let's just look at the simplest level, how much you're talking versus the prospect is talking. Okay, so we looked at one angle that we looked at it from is the deals won versus lost. Okay, closed won, closed lost, or stalled. And never mind the exact numbers, okay, just so you can see. And we looked at how much the prospect, so the percentage of the time, let's say this was a 60-minute call and the prospect spoke for 20, then it spoke 33% of the time. Okay, so there is a very clear difference between closed won and closed lost. So closed won, the prospect spoke for more time, which means the rep spoke less time, better listening, better understanding of the problem. There are other parameters that are not included here, like how many questions were asked, what types of questions, but basically keep your mouth shut a little more. That never hurts. And again, it doesn't mean that if you're not going to say anything, you're going to sell something. You do need to talk, but probably less than you're used to. So that's from an opportunity perspective. Okay. Same thing comes out pretty clearly from a rep perspective. If you look at the top people, their average is about 40% talk time, and everybody else is somewhat higher than that. Okay, so the exact numbers they don't matter. They could depend on some products require some more talking versus others, depending on how many features you have, how many questions, but less is more to an extent here. Any questions or comments from the audience so far? What's your experience?
Yeah, we have a question about the length of the calls that you analyze.
Yeah, so as I said, the average length is 43. They usually range between anywhere from 20 minutes to 70 minutes. That's the range typical for these kind of calls.
And these are discovery calls?
They're discovery, demo, some are commercial, negotiating pricing, going proposals, and some are actual closing. Okay, but the vast majority.
Do you label them and have that broken out for us?
Not in here, but certainly we have them, and maybe that's an idea for one of the future posts. Yeah, we could break them down. But
yeah, maybe we can do a follow-on post.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to. By the way, we do publish on LinkedIn, so if you connect to me on LinkedIn, we do release some Amit Bendov at LinkedIn, and then you'll get those posts and some of the results as we push them out. But if you think about the way the funnel looks, right, there are a lot more discovery calls than negotiation calls. So the vast majority here are discovery slash demo slash intro. Different companies label them differently. Okay, and the last one is actually from an example that we've seen. It's not as almost like counter to some of the things that we were saying, is that the company was, one of the companies, and again, this is not across 17, but just one example that I think is a good moral, a good lesson here, that was pushing a new product. It's an add-on product, an upsell product that they were trying to push it, and it wasn't selling well. Okay, except for, I think there were about 100 reps. Nobody was selling except 5 that were selling. And I'm trying to understand, I mean, they're doing the same number of calls. Again, the number didn't say anything. I mean, everybody was putting in the calls. They're having more or less the same amount of leads, but one group was selling more than the other, just a handful, few. And it turns out that what these guys did, they just added, but you can cancel any time. And people say, oh yeah, sure, why not? Let me try it. Okay. Now that's not, I mean, I'm sure you've seen stuff like that, and that in and of itself isn't interesting. What was interesting here, that this is not what the playbook said. Okay, so these are, the only guys that sold are ones that did not follow the playbook. They just kind of intuitively understood it. So the point, I gave you some 5 tips and rules, and I know you all have playbooks, but those playbooks will probably are generation after generation brought by the VP of sales, some consultants. Some of them probably date back to the days of Xerox, and solution selling, and calendar sales, and whatever. They may not apply to your company, and your playbook, it's not the Bible. Just keep tinkering, try different stuff, do some A/B testing, see what works, what doesn't. Never assume that what you have is carved in stone. So experiment, measure, and sometimes that's how you can find things that just are outside the conventional wisdom. All right, any questions so far? If we have, Mike, how are we doing on time?
We're doing great on time, and we have one really good question here. So when you record these calls, how do you announce that? I mean, is that regulated state by state or country by country?
Yeah, so first, it's not we recorded calls, it's the customer recorded calls. But yeah, I mean, these are not outbound calls. These are calls that are pre-scheduled with prospects and customers. And it's a good, first, it's not mandatory in every state. I think it's a good practice and ethical to ask for consent, let customers know that they want to be recorded. Most B2B prospects do not mind, and actually, if you offer them a copy of the recording, they actually appreciate it because they can share it with others. So, hey, I'm recording this call for training purposes. You send it in a meeting invite. You send it, you put it on the first slide. Would you mind? If not, absolutely, we'll be happy to take this off. So even if you record 90%, it's still pretty good. Most people just are very happy to cooperate. And my advice is always ask for permission. It's just good business and ethical. It's a great question, and almost everybody asks about it.
Cool. I'll let you continue. You still got more on here, right?
Okay, so yeah, so the rest is, I mean, these are some 5 tips. I want to understand you asked some question about what segment and all of that. So I just, we can dive a little deeper how it was done, if you're interested. So the methodology, I mean, you can't possibly listen to 25,000 calls. It just, it'll take probably like 12 to 15 years to just listen to calls and alone analyze them. So, you know, if anybody volunteers, I mean, they're more than welcome. But so what we've done is machine transcription of all calls, okay, and then speaker separation. It's very important to know who talked about pricing. The customer talked about pricing 10 times, or the rep spoke about pricing 10 times. is the rep mentioning competition all the time, or is the prospect mentioning competition? So different channels, and obviously talk-to-listen ratio and all these parameters that we've discussed. Some of the calls have more than 2 speakers. They could have 5 people on a call, 2 from the company, an AE, an SE, and 3 people from the buyer side. Then segmentation, and then because there are a lot of inaccuracy issues, machine transcription is not perfect. First, humans aren't perfect. Just sometimes people don't understand what's being said, and definitely the machine is no better. And then we use AI to overcome the accuracy issue, and I'll illustrate without diving too deep. So the holy grail is really to understand the dynamics of the call, to understand what's being discussed. So you can understand what's being discussed and what's happening on a call without actually listening to the call. So think about it as an X-ray. Try to understand what's broken or what's inside without looking at the call. So you can see this is a call that's being segmented. So this is a meeting set. Hey, how's it going? What's going up? Let me connect to I'm waiting for my boss. And then some topics that are specific, and you can see the green are pricing segments. You can see the varying length. All those with triangles are pricing, for example. This is interesting because you see an anomaly here. Okay? Usually pricing comes for this company towards the end of the call, and it takes much less. Here it comes up often, repeatedly, and takes almost eyeballing 10% of the call, which is a red flag. Okay, but that's the challenge, to really segment the call and then understand what's the structure, what are the patterns. So it's kind of like the DNA of the call, and then let's look at 20,000 calls and say what's the DNA of the successful call? What does it look like? What's the pattern? Okay, so the challenge in the step first, machine transcription can really get funny. So anybody wants to take a guess? You see like a highlighted text that I'm not going to repeat here, but what was the original, what was actually said on the call? All right, so that's how the machine hears statistical analysis, statistical analysis easily happens. Okay, so first you're talking something is inaccurate. People speak with not necessarily the right grammar, even if it's understood correctly, because this is conversational, it's not written text. Second, so once we clean it up, you need to understand the topic. So let's look at these 2 examples again. They're kind of like broken and rough, but that's just the way the machine sees. So we're looking at 2 things here that are actually the same topic. Okay, if you look at the same type of segment in a call. So I'm good, but if they complain, beautiful here in New York City, yeah, what a nice bike ride, excited about what you can in the city. And the second one, different call, okay? If you guys are looking at Portland, we are, yes, Joe, I've been hearing great things about Portland live, yeah, I'm okay. I mean, that's 8 years ago from Charlotte, yada, 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 okay? Can you label these 2? What part of the conversation would they normally appear in? Max is buying beers to everybody with the right guess. Now I think we're going to get some answers.
Someone said small talk and then intro.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's a small talk at the beginning of the call. Icebreakers, report building. Hey, how's it going? Just a little bit to, remember, this is a remote call. Someone we don't know. Try to do a little bit of icebreakers, right? Well, that's pretty easy for people. It's very difficult for a computer to understand that systematically. And again, we're talking about massive volumes. So the way that it's being identified is very similar to the way that Google or your iPhone can label pictures. You can see these are 2 different cats. I mean, it's very easy for even a baby to say meow on any of these. They look completely different, okay? Yet, it only takes us a fraction of a second to understand. So that's how these calls or segments are being clustered. So the computer, once you read a certain volume, it kind of learns and it sees more and more examples. And understand here we're talking, you can see some attributes, talk about locations, beautiful, great, some positive words, and then it learns to cluster them. Ditto for pricing, for example. So there are certain words or patterns that are typical to pricing that even if you don't say the word price, obviously there are the obvious words like users or dollars or servers or whatever your, or 20K or 50K, but there are a lot of things that are not obvious, and that's how the computer clusters them and builds those segments, and that's how you get to the holy grail of segmenting things to call. So for those of you that ask what are pricing segments, these are chunks of conversation, okay, where people talk about things that are related to pricing in different shapes or form. Not necessarily that you need to count that the word pricing was said 3 times and it's a great deal. Okay, so that's just the gist of it. Again, transcribe, clean, topic, segment, and then you get the full picture. So that's all. A little bit of taste, 5 tips, and then a bonus one. If you have any questions, this would be a good opportunity. And again, we'll be releasing more. I mean, if you send some stuff that you want to know, that you want us to try to decipher, well, we'll be happy to take a look into that.
Yeah, let's do a follow-up post on the types of calls broken out. But in the meantime, we got a couple questions here that we'll get to, real quick. So, any relation between sessions called demos by the organizer and the length of time the AE speaks? So, basically, are you tracking how long the individual is talking for? And you have, metrics on, okay, if the AE talks for this long, there's X% higher win rate. Should this person be talking for this amount of time? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think we that's, unless I'm misunderstanding the question, that's exactly what we had here. So deals that where the prospect is speaking, the middle line is the median. Okay, so the median call, it's roughly estimated to the average. So at least 33%. That would be a good sign for the prospect to say. If you talk more, or the real question is the prospect speak less, then it's not a good sign. Okay, generally, good practice. You should let people talk so you can understand the problem and it can relate to the problem they're describing. I mean, this is really basic. But you tend to see reps. I mean, it's incredible. Everybody knows these things. I don't think I'm telling anyone anything that they haven't heard 100 times. It's amazing where you see people in the high 80s, like across the board. They just talk and talk and talk, and they get excited, like I'm doing right now. But this is a webinar. It's okay. But 80% is definitely not good.
Okay. What are some of the most successful words to say? Do you have any key words?
We don't have successful words that people say yet.
Yeah.
Something working on it. It does vary by company. I would say that there is no word that. I know people want that. Just one word that I'm going to say that, and I'll dominate the account. It's more about the match between what the prospect, the question that you're asking, what the prospect is saying, and then how you relate to this thing. So it's the correlation between what it's a tango, right? That's how the conversation is going, really the key things. That said, there are some big things for the company that, bigger picture things that, but that's company specific. Okay, I gave you one word, I understand, that was specific to that company because they're looking at projects that are happening. The other companies, some companies sell to technical people, some sell to finance people, some sell to HR people. That's company specific.
Okay. I mean, we have a lot of product related questions here, so we'll send those to you, and we'll let you get to those personally, so we don't take up too much time here. But I think we have time for one more question, and somebody actually wanted you to summarize the 5 tips. So if you can quickly summarize the 5 things that we went over, it's a great way to kind of wrap up the webinar.
All right, so tip number 1, probably keep your mouth shut a little more and listen. Ask about deal time a little bit in the beginning, but a little more once the value has been established. And then pay attention to what pricing, and this is, I'll generalize it, some of the reps asked me it was a good call. Why was it a good call? Because they asked good questions. So some companies, if people don't ask about pricing at all, it's not a good sign. If people don't ask about security, for example, it may not be a good sign. So there are some buying questions that are good. It shows that someone's serious. Pay attention to that. Again, you probably, and again, with the qualification, just pay attention to what people are saying about their timing of the project. Again, it doesn't mean the deal will close, but it means that they're considering and it's much more likely to happen when they said it will happen. And then the last one is your playbook is not the Bible. Feel free to tweak, experiment, and you should if you want results that are better than average.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, we have some product questions that we'll forward on to you, and you'll be able to get with people one-to-one on. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Amit. That was awesome. Let's do the follow-up post for sure. We'll have the recording up again later this week. We'll tweak the audio a little bit so it's a little bit clearer. I know we had a couple questions about that. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the next webinars tomorrow with Richard Harris, and I think we got Inside Sales. But thanks again, Amit. That was awesome. Go to gong.io for more information and connect with Amit on LinkedIn. Amit, anything to close out with?
No, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully you find it useful, and thank you, Max, for hosting. It's a great audience and a great event.
Definitely. If you're new to saleshacker.com, we just rolled out memberships. If you want to learn more about some tactical sales stuff for sales development and AEs, check that out, and we will see you next time. Thank you.